we're set. Okay, so
Okay, fantastic. Thank
yeah.
you, Jim.
Oh, sure, sure. And that's recording right now, so we're set to go. Okay, so basically, so just really quick tour of the tool and what it's supposed to do. That's probably the fastest way to show you. And I'll explain kind of what our current state is and what we need help on. So the tool, if I open this up, is called it, that link has the tool. And actually, it opens better in Chrome, so I'm going to just open it up under Chrome. Here it is. Okay, I'll close it from here because I don't want that. There we go. Okay, so here it is. And what it allows you to do, it has a ton of value sets in there, okay? But what it allows you to do is create a value set, okay? These are all NLM value sets for medications, for covering all of meaningful use, okay? But I can also create a de novo value set, okay? And the OID we typically don't know, so I put TBD, okay? Name of the value set, you just give it a name, and let's call it beta blockers with oral um, ARBs. Okay,
Okay.
and you can put some description. The version is usually the date, so it's 11/10/2013. And the project type, right now the value set tool just does medications and ingredients or allergies. In the future, we'll have it do problems, procedures, and so on. But right now, that's the domain that they want us to work on. So we just have medications. Okay. And if you click Save, it creates that value set. Now, you'll find that the value set is down on the bottom here, is added at the bottom of the list. You can just double click on it, okay, and you can start to define it. So our intent here was to define a value set instead of enumerating every drug in it. It'd be nice to be able to set a rule and say, if you run this rule, this value set will compute itself. And if there's an update from RxNorm or FDB or whoever, it'll refresh itself automatically once you have the rule correctly. And I think you're familiar with that. Like in VCG, you probably don't, in SNOMED, enumerate every single item in the list from a hierarchy or subset of hierarchies. You do inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, you compute, and then you take the output of that and put it into VCG, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so that is very similar to that. So basically, with medications, the first thing we have to do is say, what are the defining attributes that we'll always want to use when defining a medication value set? Okay, and there are really 6 defining attributes that can define any medication value set. So it's a little easier than procedures or problems. So if I'm going to go ahead and edit the value set, to start to define the rules, I can do, first thing I have to do is I have to create a group. Okay, what a group is, it's a collection of criteria that are ANDed together. So basically, if I wanted to say any drug that contains a beta blocker and an ARB, it's a combination drug. It has both ingredients and it's oral. That to do the AND, it has to meet all of these AND criteria. Then I would put that in a group in the value set because anything defined in a group is ANDed together as criteria. Okay.
Okay.
If I wanted to do an OR, I want to say any what I really meant is any beta blocker or any ARB, whether it's a combination or not. Then I create 2 groups because I can say one group is beta blockers and one group is ARBs. And then when I define the value set that way, it'll take the union of both and say there is your value set. It's propranolol, but it's also valsaltran, or it's a variety of different drugs that contain ingredients that are from either family. So that's important but subtle a distinction, because if my intent was to do only combination drugs, I'm only going to put everything in one group. If my intent was to create a union, I'm going to create 2 groups and let them union together, and it should catch the combination as well as the single ingredient value sets. Okay, and that's the main thing that I'm having bugs with right now in the tool. I'm trying to get the India team to finish, fixing the bugs on that. They're very close, but they're not quite there yet. And then there's some issues with refresh and requerying of the data in the tool that are technical that they can probably fix, but can use some help testing that and giving them feedback as well when they get stuck. Okay. And right now, just to let you know who's working on this is there's Paul Frostick, who's a pharmacist, and he's working on this right now doing QA. Paul is based out of Australia, and he's a good friend, and he's just been working on this for the last 2 months. Okay. There's also the development team, which is Hedda Ray and her and Sudhir, and it's basically 4 or 5 people in India. Okay, who are doing the development. They're excellent developers, and they're very. There's no language barrier. They're very clear. You'd be talking to them regularly. They're really wonderful. And then in addition, there's on our side here Joel Aronoff, who works for McKesson. He's one of my clients, but also I hire him on the side to help me with things. Joel is really brilliant. He's trying to leave McKesson. He's trying to decide whether he's going to stay long term or not, but he wanted to test consulting, so I put him on this project to help do this. Now, Joel Aronoff doesn't have any clinical experience. He's purely, kind of technical. He knows terminology systems really well. Very, very smart, very nice, easy to work with, but not clinical. He's good information modeler, and he knows Snowman, he knows ArcStorm, and he's good there. But he's also limited in time because he's also still working full time for McKesson. Paul Frostick is really good, but he's the time difference makes it a little bit difficult. Plus, he's also doing work for Lantana. So between me and Bob, he's juggling a lot of balls. So he's able to do it, but he wrote most of the specs for testing, but he's not able to move fast enough, I think, because of he's spread a little thin. And Hedda and the development team is 100% dedicated. So they push very hard. They'll say, well, we need this clarified, that clarified, and they'll put issues in Jira. Jira is our bug tracking mechanism. Okay, and they'll open issues, and then if it doesn't get answered right away, Hedda's really quick at saying, okay, I need feedback now. I need da da da. And so she's great. She's a little, she can be a little bit overwhelming, but she's really good because, for me, I slack, and she kind of, pulls me by the ear and says, do this. So so you might find her a little annoying, but she means good.
No, no problem at all.
Yeah. And okay, so that's kind of the team that's working on this right now. And Isa is project managing it, but she's not directly involved with a lot of this right now. She's trying to help me get it done, but she doesn't know the details of what's underneath this. So to that level of detail, she knows a lot of it, but really Paul is the primary person, along with Joel, who are trying to help Hedda finish this up. Okay.
Got it.
So now with the background, we're going back to the value set here. Remember, I was going to do beta blockers with oral ARBs. So first thing I'm going to do is show you how I define a value.
Jim, the value set that you're creating there is a oral beta blockers also with oral ARBs.
Yeah, oral beta. I should call it beta blockers with ARBs oral, or oral whatever. It's oral both.
Clarify what you meant. Okay, yep. Go ahead.
And so now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 2 permutations. First, I'm going to show you the value set where it only has combination drugs. Any pill that has both a beta blocker and an ARB in combination. Okay, and then I'm going to show you a different type of value set using the same name. I say, well, what if I meant not a combination, but any drug that contains either a beta blocker or an ARB? Okay, because then they'll be built 2 different ways. One will use 1 group, the other one will use 2 groups. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah.
So meaning that one is beta blocker with ARB as a combination, whereas the alternative would be all beta blockers and all ARBs, and the union of those would be your value set.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. And so, so first thing I'm going to do is add a group. Okay. And so, so to add the group, I'll just put in the name for it. So I'm going to call it beta blocker ARB oral combo. And that's because it's just both ingredients together. Okay.
Right.
And so I'm going to add the group. Okay. And so now I could save the group. Okay, but it won't do anything because I don't have any definition in it. So it may not do anything. Now, one thing that's that we logged as an issue or a bug in the tool is that sometimes it gets stuck saving. Okay, so HEDA is working on that. If it gets stuck, just start another instance. You know, just spawn another instance while it's thinking, and just do, let it start over again. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So while this is thinking, I'll just start another one because otherwise you'll be waiting all day. And so
At that point, your value set name has already been saved, right? It's just a criteria at that point.
Yep, it's just criteria that are not set. And one thing that's useful to find them is that you can just reverse sort by date, and and just it should float up to the top. Okay, so here's beta blockers and ARBs. Okay, and so I'll go ahead and open that. Okay, and see if that one is cooked yet. That didn't cook, so I'll just kill it. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit it. Okay, so we'll go ahead, call it again, beta blocker with ARB oral combo, something like that. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and add the group. Okay, and so now I'm also going to add another group so I can deal with it later. Beta blockers oral. You don't have to put the thing together. I just like to do that. Some people put spaces between. And then I'll also add another group.
ARB oral.
ARB oral.
Uh-huh.
Okay. There you go. And now I have, now I can scroll through the groups. So here's ARB oral, ARB beta blocker, oral. Oh, I didn't save the other one. Let me add one more.
The combo. Yeah.
Beta blocker ARB combo. Okay, so now I have one. Okay, so now I have all three of them. Okay, so now I'm just going to deal with this one right here. Okay, so so we basically have 5 defining attributes we can define any value set medications with. Okay, and they kind of make sense. You can say any drug that contains any combination of these attributes. Okay, so what makes up medications are ingredients. Okay, therapeutic class or dose forms. Okay, the routes. So dose form group route is a route. Dose form group in Rx norm is a dose form, and a strength. So ingredient, route, dose form, and strength. Okay, but I can also define it in terms of therapeutic class. Now, we also have NDFRT in here, but we're not using NDFRT anymore because it's broken in the NLM. They never really did it right. So we're just going to use FDB therapeutic classes. And the reason is that when NLM is ready, FDB is going to map to the NDFRT classes, and then we can translate everything over to NDFRT through that mapping.
Okay.
Yeah. But the key thing is that the defining attributes are ingredients, their routes, their dose forms, their strengths, and their therapeutic classes. Okay, and in the future we'll use term type and NDFRT classes, but right now we're not bothering with that right now. Okay.
Right.
And so basically to define beta blockers, the easiest thing then would be for me to pick a therapeutic class because I wouldn't have to enumerate every drug. Okay, so I'll just put a beta blocker. And so you can search like that. If it doesn't come up with it, then I'll just put a space between the two.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
There you go. There you go. Okay, so here are the beta blockers, and so I can these you can't really see them hierarchically, but they're implicit hierarchically, and they kind of are in order. And so I can pick. Well, one thing that's really handy is that it says beta blocker. There may be beta blocker ARB combination. So let's see.
There actually is.
Yeah.
but I don't see it there. But I know there's one,
Yeah.
created one.
Well, no, I thought that was in here, but it might be because the data is frozen and not very up to date. So why don't I just pick beta blocker or diuretic? We'll make this diuretic instead of ARB, just for this to make it easier. Okay.
Sure.
So we'll pick that. Okay. And we'll just say include. Okay. And then I can restrict it further by saying restrict it to oral forms. Okay. Let's say oral.
Mm-hmm.
Let's search. It should come back with something. Okay, so I'll say and Rx norm. Oh, what you want to do is dose form for orals. It's kind of weird, but Rx norm names things very strangely. The dose form group is what you want to use for saying, generally orals. You would think it was dose form with route, but no, it's dose form group. Okay, so dose form group says orals, like oral products. It's more general. Okay, so now it's oral products that are beta blocker and diuretic combinations. And so now I have everything that I need, and so I can go ahead and save.
Jim, you wanna add the ARB therapeutic class there?
Oh, we switched and said let's use diuretics and beta blocker,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
yeah, just for
for this
tutorial
example.
purposes, right?
Yeah, and so and we can change this to beta blocker. Well, we'll change the names of the. I won't bother changing the names right now. We'll just know that what we really meant is, beta blocker and diuretic combinations. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so now I've included everything and I restricted it to orals. Okay, and so now if I click compute, it'll go ahead and compute the value set from the classes restricted to oral routes. And what I should see in here is just combination drugs, and I shouldn't see anything that's not a combination. Okay, and the compute sometimes takes a long time too. Okay, so while it's thinking, we can start working on a different value set just because it takes a little while for it to compute.
Jim,
Mm-hmm.
before we move to another value set,
Yep.
so let's say it's been resulted here.
Mm-hmm.
What is the task of the work?
The task of the work is to.
Yeah, what's the objective?
Yeah, the objective is to double check to make sure that the rule is defining logically the members of the value set. Okay, so basically, if after it computes, it brings back a list of beta blockers that are not in combination with a diuretic, or it brings back a list of diuretics that are not in combination with a beta blocker, then we know it's not working correctly. Okay, and that's because this class was a combination drug, right? So, so if I go ahead and look at, in order to see the report, you have to pick Rx norm enhanced medications. Okay, and so that gives you the list of combinations, and it's what I expected. It's working correctly because if you notice, everything it brought back are drugs that are beta blockers and diuretics combinations. If it brought back hydrochlorothiazide, for example, or just propranolol, for example, then I know that the rules are not working correctly and the query needs to be fixed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Jim,
Mhm.
just staying in this frame of thought. Why would there be an ambiguity to question the result set? Because these classes were defined explicitly by FDB.
Oh, yeah. It's actually there may have been ambiguity in that if I wanted to restrict it to just orals, okay, then if I pick that class, it would bring back topical, injectable, oral patches. It'll bring back every route and dose form. Okay, so basically the class in FDB helps, but it's not enough because it doesn't define um, it doesn't constrain it to just the orals.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a table for those route form in FDB that tells you I'm only interested in oral form, which you've defined in your value set criteria.
Yeah, but remember that we're actually not using FDB to do this. What we're using FDB as a bridge to aggregate RX norm. So all these are RX norm CUIs. Okay. What we did is we used the FDB class, and then we used FDB's mappings of drugs from the NDDF to RX norm to then bridge over to these drugs, right?
Say that again because that was an important point. It was a mapping of.
Okay. So
FDB.
Yeah, we used FDB's class, but we then internally bridged over from FDB's class through FDB's mappings to RX norm to get to RX norm concepts. Because what we're doing is we're using FDB classes to bring back groupings of RX norm concepts. So these aren't FDB concepts; these are all just RX norm concepts. But we used FDB's mappings to RX norm to bring to identify them.
But it's still a union of FDB RX norm, right? It's FDB RX norm mappings to RX norm that does the translation to RX norm ERX concepts.
Yeah, it's actually the FDB class's relationship to a GCN sequence number, and then we bridge from the GCN sequence number to the semantic clinical drug, and that's what you're seeing here. Okay, so we do that, but because RX norm doesn't have the notion of a route where FDB does, and FDB doesn't have mappings for routes, what we did is we also in our criteria. I remember I picked the dose form group of oral product.
Yes.
What I'm doing there is constraining by RX norm criteria. I'm saying I've identified the superset of drugs using an FDB class in RX norm of semantic clinical drugs, but then I used the dose form group in RX norm to further constrain it to the oral formulations of the drug in RX norm. Because if I did that in FDB and constrained it there, I could have used the FDB attributes for that, but I can't distribute that rule to FDB only allows distribution for NLM of the class level, okay, the drug class level, but they don't want to NLM to distribute publicly the FDB routes, the GCRTs or the GCDFs, and so we have to define the rule in terms of FDB sanctioned data elements and RX norm sanctioned data elements that can freely go out to the public. Because then what will happen is the NLM will then make those rules available. Once we save them, they'll make those rules available to the public, saying here's an intentional rule for meaningful use stage 3 based on RX norm attributes and FDB attributes. Now, our strategy is to get rid of the FDB class altogether and just use NDFRT as soon as NDFRT is cleaned up, but that's going to take another 6 months. So instead of waiting for 6 months, we're using FDB to identify these in the rules, and then once NDFRT is cleaned up, we'll use FDB's mapping to NDFRT to substitute the FDB classes with the NDFRT classes.
Got it.
Yep. So that's a good question.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
If there was question on the precision of your result set, could it be a reflection that the RX norm for a given FDB class, the RX norm at the ERX level for an FDB class, is incorrectly assigned when you do the bridge between FDB RX norm values to RX norm?
Oh yeah.
Ultimately to RX norm concepts?
Yep, that's very possible. And that's why in the value set editor, when we're just testing the functionality, but we're not testing the quality, because when we start doing the actual creation of content, once we make sure that the rule, the functionality is doing what it's supposed to, then the editors who are going to be doing this may actually use the class to define, let's say, all the elements that they want and all the members in the rule, but they may actually do inclusion and exclusion criteria of things that are gaps. to fill in the gap, basically. So let's say that FDB is overly inclusive and has in there beta blockers that are only used in in OR. Okay, then